what it is geopolitical. When they put the sanctions in on Russia, they have divided the world economy. All right. And it's not a threat that in the sense that it's going to replace the dollar type thing. It has divided the world economy, and in that sense, we're not looking at globalization as we once did. So economic growth will continue to decline at least into 2028. So it's more of a geopolitical issue where you have even India lining up more against the United States because they understand if you don't do what somebody like Blinken is directing you to do, they can remove you from the SWIFT system. Then what do you do?
Right.
That's what this is really about. It's not de-dollarization because, the dollar's not backed by anything, so maybe they'll back by gold. That's all nonsense. This is geopolitical.
Global markets are changing faster than most people realize. The real story goes far beyond currencies and headlines. Martin Armstrong argues that the biggest shift in the global economy is geopolitical, not monetary. According to him, sanctions placed on Russia have effectively divided the world economy, creating separate spheres of economic influence. He explains that this is not primarily about replacing the dollar or creating a gold-backed currency. Instead, the deeper issue is growing political fragmentation between nations. As countries become more cautious about financial dependence, they seek alternatives that reduce vulnerability to external pressure. Armstrong notes that access to systems like SWIFT has become a powerful geopolitical tool, encouraging nations to rethink alliances and financial strategies. He believes globalization is weakening, and that economic growth may continue to slow into 2028. Understanding these developments is essential for investors, businesses, policymakers, and anyone following the future of global markets today. Now, we present the clips from Martin Armstrong's interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
China is copying the United States. Their Silk Road, they're trying to build a consumer-based economy to rival the U.S.
Yeah.
All right. Germany is still based on the 18th century mercantile model. We build things and sell them to everybody else, and we take our profits home. You look at the studies, the average German has less net worth than an Italian.
Yep. And their economy's in ruins.
Well, they don't even understand inflation, the hyperinflation of the 20s. They think it was, because they printed money. No, it was not. All right. The printing of the money was the result of, not the cause. In December of 1922, the government confiscated 10% of everybody's accounts and handed them bonds because they couldn't make the reparation payments. The hyperinflation started in 1923. If the government came in and took 10% of all your money in the bank, would you leave the rest of it there?
No.
That's what started the hyperinflation. So the government, people moved money out of the country. They took every other currency but German. All right. So they ended up having to print money just to pay for the reparation payments. All right.
That's very interesting.
It all collapsed and they came out with a new currency in 1925. Look it up. What was it backed by? Real estate. It actually went fine because the people, this is what you have to understand. And this is why we're in this, what they are calling everything bubble.
Okay.
It's when you don't trust the government anymore. What do? Some people are buying gold. Some people are buying silver. Some people are buying art. Some people are buying rare coins, Ferraris, real estate, and stocks. So you've seen gold go up with the stock market. Not against it.
Right.
Why? Because money has been fleeing the public sector, going to the private sector. If you don't trust government, just as in Germany, people moved money. When you move it away from the government, that's what caused the hyperinflation. War is the perfect excuse to default on debt. You can basically, you can go on eBay and buy bonds from all these older governments. You can even buy continental currency from the American Revolution. The Constitution swore they were going to, pay the debts of the previous government. They never did. That never happens. So from World War II, they never honored all the debts from before. So if you create war, you get to default on everybody. That's the last government, we're a new one. So that's what basically takes place. Now, a lot of people are talking about the digital currency, and I don't think they quite understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. The digital currency is part of the solution for them, but there's a more sinister element to this that I was talking to somebody, and they apparently, it's not in the major press, but United Nations has created their own digital currency. They are planning that will replace the dollar as a reserve currency. And why? Mainly because the sanctions that they put on Russia have actually destroyed the world economy. That's part, Russia pulls out, China pulls out, you start creating the BRICS. All right. They set up their own clearing systems. When Russia went into Crimea in 2014, that's when Obama went to the SWIFT system and said, we want them to be removed. And SWIFT refused. They said, no, you're not going to use this monetary system as a weapon. So what did they do? They replaced the head of SWIFT in 2019, and he does whatever he's told. Now, you have to understand, a lot of people, it's because gold and gold and the dollar, etc. Look, that's all nonsense. This is geopolitical.
Yeah.
And you basically do not want to use the currency of your enemy. All right. So effectively, that's what the UN is looking to reestablish the world economy. And saying, okay, fine, we will replace the dollar. All right. So you'll have that with the IMF. The United Nations has been using the climate change to justify no single country can possibly deal with this. It's going to take a coordinated effort by one major, overall government. So they've been pushing this one world government idea. What it is geopolitical. When they put the sanctions in on Russia, they have divided the world economy. All right. And it's not a threat in the sense that it's going to replace the dollar type thing. It has divided the world economy, and in that sense, we're not looking at globalization as we once did. So economic growth will continue to decline at least into 2028. So it's more of a geopolitical issue where you have even India lining up more against the United States because they understand if you don't do what somebody like Blinken is directing you to do, they can remove you from the SWIFT system. Then what do you do?
Right.
That's what this is really about. It's not de-dollarization because, the dollar's not backed by anything, so maybe they'll back by gold. That's all nonsense. This is geopolitical.
Global economic trends continue to reshape the way nations compete, invest, and build long-term prosperity. Economic growth is increasingly influenced by factors such as industrial production, consumer spending, inflation management, technological innovation, and international trade. Financial markets often react to changes in government policy, interest rates, currency stability, and investor confidence. When confidence in public institutions declines, capital frequently shifts toward assets such as real estate, stocks, precious metals, and other stores of value. This movement can significantly impact asset prices and overall market performance. Understanding historical economic cycles helps explain modern financial challenges and opportunities. Countries that successfully adapt to changing global conditions are often better positioned to attract investment, create jobs, and strengthen their economies. Businesses and investors closely monitor economic indicators to identify emerging trends and manage risk effectively. Market participants also pay attention to supply chains, energy costs, and geopolitical developments that can influence growth prospects. These interconnected forces continue to shape the global economy and financial landscape. Let's get back to the interview.
We've decided you're a bank. I said, I'm a bank. Well, the Constitution never demonetized gold, so that's really money. We understand you didn't realize you were a bank. I said, no, I didn't realize. And then they say, well, okay, fine. You were supposed to report every transaction of $10,000 or more. And the fine is $50,000 per transaction. I looked at the guy. I said, what? You just want the keys? Is this what this is about? No. We understand you didn't know. We want to basically, we'll compromise. Just let us come in and audit all the people that have been buying and selling. They audited over 3,000 clients. They can do that to a Bitcoin. Oh, you're a bank. You're mining. It's just a question of a pen. The state of New Jersey came in and said, no, we declare you to be a merchant. Now, I'll tell you how nuts this was. In 1975, when gold was legalized, the state Senator Wolfram came to me, asked me to write the law for the state of New Jersey that gold would not be taxable because once it started trading on the exchange, can't be subject to a sales tax. I said, okay, fine. I wrote the law and it said, okay, gold is not subject to sales tax unless converted to use. Again, after 1980, state of New Jersey walks in. And what did they say to me? Oh, well, we've decided you're a merchant. I said, well, the IRS just said I'm a bank. All right. And they said, well, you should have been collecting sales tax. I said, no, I actually wrote the law. I took them to court and lost. All right. When I went, I was not even allowed to testify. The government said, we concede. He wrote the law. He may have misunderstood what the Senate asked him to actually write. The United States in 1896 was virtually bankrupt. That's when J.P. Morgan had to lend $100 million in gold to bail out the Treasury. It was World War I and World War II that made the United States the biggest economy. Britain was the biggest before. It lost that title after World War I. And that's really what made 1929, all this. All right. So what will happen by starting the war over there in Europe, the capital will first come to the dollar.
Yep.
As it did with World War I, World War II. All right. Europe is it's a failed system. When they were creating the euro, they also came to me. And I warned them that they were saying, oh, everybody's going to pay one interest rate. I said, what you're doing is just, it's propaganda. It's not going to work. I said, you have to consolidate the debts. Mm-hmm. And what it was coal out of Germany. He refused to consolidate the debts of all members, mainly because he knew that the German people would never vote to join the euro. And you can look this up. He admitted he acted like a dictator. The Germans were never given a right to vote. He took them into the euro unilaterally. And what he did to do so, he refused to allow a consolidation of the debt. So I warn them, and this is what is the fault in Europe. You just merely transferred the volatility from the currencies to the bond markets. You want to sell Italy and you want to do an arbitrage, Italy versus Germany. What do? You sell the bonds and you buy the German.
Right.
All right. You used to do that with the currency. So the bonds have become the currency markets. That's it. And that's the problem with Europe. And you see the peripherals, the interest rates are higher than the core. Everything they promised about the euro is not working. Mm-hmm. Then you have the credibility of the banking system. To be fair and equal, a bank has to have its reserves spread among all members. Can't prejudice Italy versus Spain, etc. All right. So then the banks are now vulnerable to the same problems of the volatility when you're looking at, because they transferred it from the currency to the bonds. You get a default in Greece or Italy or Spain or whatever, that then ripples through and takes down banks in the north. It's really quite a mess. So they know these things. All right. This is why I honestly think that they are pushing for war as the excuse that they didn't fail. It's not that they designed the euro incorrectly. It's that, it's Putin.
The bigger issue isn't any single policy, institution, or market event. It's how financial systems react when pressure starts building beneath the surface. What appears stable on paper can often reveal deeper structural weaknesses when economic conditions change. And history has shown that these stresses rarely stay isolated for long. Throughout this discussion, we've explored how regulations, banking systems, sovereign debt, and monetary frameworks can become interconnected in ways that many people overlook. When one part of the system strains, the effects can spread far beyond where the problem first began, influencing markets, governments, and everyday financial decisions. Understanding these connections provides valuable context for interpreting major economic developments and the narratives that often surround them. Rather than focusing solely on headlines, it helps to examine the underlying mechanics that shape long-term outcomes. If you found this analysis insightful, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more discussions on economics, financial history, monetary systems, and the forces driving global markets. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.